Hi and welcome to this how to help video on dividing with the bus shelter. Dividing by the bus shelter, for some students, it's quite stressful. They don't like it. Their experience might not always have been successful. And I think a lot of that just comes down to practice. It might be that you haven't had enough exposure and enough time to practice it in order for it to start to feel more fluent. So what you're getting here is just a quick how to do it, but you would still need, obviously, to go away and practice those techniques so that you could get to that stage where you're like, oh yeah, it's a divide question. Yeah, just stick it in bus shelter. And that's the level of confidence that you really want to try and get to if you can, okay? So let's have a look at a question and talk about the method itself. So 258 divided by 6 is definitely something I would use the bus shelter for. I'm not going to try and count the sixes until I get to 258. That would take forever, and I'm likely to go wrong at some point with that many calculations to do. And I obviously don't just know the answer, so I have to have a technique that I can use that's going to help me find it. So bus shelter is my go-to. I've got 258. It's going to sit inside my bus shelter, okay? And then the 6 is on the outside. And you'll notice that I've kind of spaced these out a little bit, just so I've got some room to put my carryovers on. And you'll see what I mean when we start carrying over, okay? This 6 is on the outside of the bus shelter. And it's really important it stays there. So I'm stressing this because it's a common mistake that I see lots of people make. That 6 just sneaks in as a carryover when it shouldn't. So see this as a barrier that it cannot cross. It never crosses. It's like hitting a wall. It can't get through, okay? Now the process is to say, right, how many 6s can I get into 2? And then how many 6s can I get into the next number? And how many in the next number? So I'm basically working my way along. So let's do that. How many 6s can I get into 2? There's 2. I can't get a whole 6 out because I don't have enough. So the answer to that is none. And I'm going to show that with 0. I can't get any. But it also means I haven't actually really used the 2s yet. So the 2 is going to go across and sit with the next number. And that's what I meant by that carryover. So we're going to take it across and we're going to pop it kind of on the shoulder of the next number. Now, what that means is I'm not going to be doing 6 divided by 5 because it's not 5 anymore. I've just made 25 by doing what I did. So I'm going to be doing how many 6s into 25. So I work that out. And when I've got that answer, I write it down at the top. 6 4s are 24. So that's left me 1 over. And that 1 gets carried across. And then I ask the question, how many 6s can I get into 18? Not 8, 18, because that's the number I've just made. So 6s into 18 go 3. And there's the answer sitting on the top of the bus shelter. 258 divided by 6 is 43. Happy days. So when it goes exactly, it usually works through quite neatly. When it doesn't go exactly, we need to know what to do. So I'm going to show you something first, and then I'm going to show you how it works in our bus shelter. I want to basically remind you of our hundreds, tens, units. We have our decimal point there, and so on. When we first learn about our numbers, we use this to help us, okay? And I think the point that I want you to understand is that every whole number, let's say I've got the number 62. 62 would live there. Let's say I've got 138. 138 would live there. But every single whole number stops right in front of that decimal point, yeah? The next thing here is a decimal point. So all my whole numbers have invisible decimal points, and that's a useful fact when I've got a bus shelter that doesn't go perfectly. So let me show you what I mean by that. We'll just do, we'll do 346 divided by 8. So 3, 4, 6 divided by 8. I'm going to just start this. I know, we know, because I've just told you it's not going to go perfectly, but we wouldn't know that normally. Ordinarily, we get a question, we go, okay, I'll start my bus shelter then. So away I go. 8s into 3, I can't get any, so I carry the 3. 8s into 34, I can get 4. 8 4s are 32, leaving me 2 left over. 8s into 26 will go 3. All right, 8 3s are 24. So that leaves me 2 over. And when I try to write my little 2 on the next digit, there's nothing there. So it's kind of like hanging around. I've also come to the very end of my whole number. So there was a decimal point that we never showed right here. And now I'm going into the next digit, into the next column, if you like. So at this point, I don't think too much about the decimal point. I'm just trying to demonstrate why it suddenly appears. Because at this point, when I've got a little number that I wanted to carry over and there's no digit, I just do 2 things in my head. I say, right, that's going to need a 0, and I must put my decimal point up. I've reached the end of the number, so I need to put my decimal point in the answer at this stage. So now I'm going to say, how many 8s can I get into 20? 8s into 20 go 2. 8 2s are 16, so I have 4 left over. And then finally, I can see this is going to end for me. 8s into 40 will go 5 exactly. So the answer to that one is 43.25. And you would just keep going, adding zeros until you finally got to the end and terminated with your answer. But sometimes you can see they're not going to. You just keep getting a 3, a 3, a 3. So you find you've got yourself a recurring decimal. Sometimes there seems to be no pattern and it just goes on forever. And you have to kind of think, oh, I think I'll stop now because this is just going on forever. Generally, if you are expected to do a question using the bus shelter, you are going to be given questions that will terminate, or you will be told how to give your answer. So that's how to do the bus shelter when you end up with decimals. So what about when you have to multiply? Sorry, not multiply. What happens when you have to divide a 2-digit number? So I'm going to show you this, all right. Hopefully the screen is going to behave itself. Yes, good. So 1,468, we're going to divide that by 16. Now you absolutely are using bus shelter, so we're not escaping this, okay. And what you could do is you could start now writing your 16 times table. I'm going to do it over here out of the way. So I've got 16, double it, I've got 32. 6 plus 2 is 8, 1 plus 3 is 4. And then I'm going to add this number to this number. And I'm just going to keep adding 16, okay? So there's the next one. That's the next one, 96, 112, 128, 144. I can tell that is as far as I need to go for now. That is a lot of work and there's no getting around it. You will need to do that work unless the numbers are kind to you. Now I'm going to finish it off this way so you can properly see how it comes together. And then I'm going to show you that some questions, not all, but some questions give you an opportunity to kind of cheat a little bit. And I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to say 16s into 1. Well, I can't do that. So I can't get any, carry the 1. And I can see that 16 into 14 isn't going to work either. So that's 0. I've got to carry all of the 14 and I've got 146. And that's why I needed to go so far down with my list. And every single new one I write is an opportunity for an error. I've only got to make one addition that's wrong and it throws the whole thing out. So it's quite a risky business, this whole writing out large times tables. But anyway, I can see it's here, 144. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I can get 9 with just 2 left over. So how many 16s in 28? Well, that's too big, so I can only get 1. So 1. And then what have I got left over? I've got 12 left over. And my 12 is hanging around. So the minute you get into that hanging around stage, just think, put down the 0, put down the dot, and it's done. So you don't have to think any deeper than that. Put down the 0, put down the dot. Okay, now I've got 120. So that's too big. So I'm here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7. 112 means I've got 8 left over. Put down the 0, and thankfully I've got 80 there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I have finished. So my answer is 91.75. It's good to have a shortcut if there's one available, and this type of question there is. All right, so let me show you how we're going to do our shortcut. Like I said, it doesn't work all the time, sadly, but it's quite good when it does work. So 1,468 divided by 16 could be written as this. That's what a fraction is, something divided by something. So that's true, that's a fact. And because they're both even, I can use my rules of fractions in order to simplify it. So I could divide by 2 because they're both even, which would give me 734 over 8. Now I could at this stage just stop and say, okay, I'm going to do 734 and I'm going to divide it by 8. And the reason that will be easier to do is because we know our 8 times tables better than we know our 16 times table. Our 8 times table, if we did need to write it out, is easier to write out than our 16 times table. So if I can manipulate my question by cancelling it, makes sense to. These are both even. So if I wanted to take the time, I could make it even smaller. And half again, 367 over 4. Now I can put that into my bus shelter and get my answer using the 4 times table. You'll notice I can't go again. Wouldn't it be nice if I could? If I could half again, and then I could just use the 2 times table. I've got an odd number here, so that's not happening. So I am going to stop. And if I go through the process of using the bus shelter, then that is going to come out with the right answer. Okay, sorry, my phone going off. Okay, next thing. Next thing could be that you're being asked to divide by decimal. So let's say we've got 56 and we're being asked to divide by 0.4. Now I like using the fraction to help explain what we do here. I'm not going to try and divide by 0.4. I'm not about to start writing out my 0.4 times tables. I want to work in integers. I want to work in whole numbers because they're just easier and they're what I'm used to doing. So if I've got 56 to divide by 0.4, I can get rid of that decimal by multiplying up the fraction. So if I times both the top and the bottom by 10, then I will be writing an equivalent fraction. So it's the same value, it's equivalent, but they're different numbers. So that would give me 560 divided by 4. Now I can take that, stick it in my bus shelter, and start working through it. So 4s into 5 go 1, remainder 1. 4s into 16 go 4. And then 4s into 0, I'm not going to do, I'm just going to bring the 0 up. And I've got 140. 4s into 0 don't go, so up goes the 0. Okay, and it just works a treat like that. So we've got 140. So if you've got to divide by a decimal, just get rid of it. Just get rid of it and get your answer that way. Okay, so 56 divided by 0.4 is 140. Don't start trying to divide the answer back down by 10. That's a common thing that I see. We changed it to an equivalent one, so it had the same value. Therefore, the answers will be the same as well. Last thing I wanted to show you with where our bus shelter can be used is changing fractions into decimals. So if I had the fraction 3/8 and I had to write that as a decimal, I can see this is 3 divided by 8. 3 divided by 8. How many 8s can I get into 3? None. Which I would expect because it's a fraction, so it's only a part of a whole. So I'm expecting to see a 0, really. So how many 8s can I get into 3? None. I need to still use the 3 in my maths, so I carry it over. And it's floating around, nothing to hold on to it. So this is where I put down the 0, put down the point. Then I can say, right, how many 8s can I get into 30? That is 3. 3 8s are 24, so I've got 6 left over, add the 0. How many 8s can I get into 60? So that is 7. 8 7s are 56, so I've got 4 left over, put down a 0, and you keep going until you finally finish. This is going to finish for us on this last one. 8s into 40, go 5, exactly. So 3/8 is the same as 0.375, and little old bus shelter did all the work for me. So it's a really, really great method. If there's a division, bus shelter can handle it. And then you can have a few little tips and tricks up your sleeves to make the questions a little easier to manage if you have got to do it by hand. So that's it. They're all the basic techniques for dividing with the bus shelter. I really hope that you have found it useful. Please do make sure you practice it so that you get to that stage where you're like, it doesn't frighten me anymore. Bus shelter and I are friends. That's the stage you want to get to. If you've enjoyed the video, if you found it useful, please subscribe and feel free to explore some of the other videos that are available. Okay, so thanks for joining me.